I'll be discussing the topic of government surveillance. Surveillance is the monitoring of behavior, activities, or other changing information, usually of people, for the purpose of influencing, managing, directing, or protecting them. Surveillance is very useful to governments and law enforcement to maintain social control, recognize and monitor threats, and prevent/investigate criminal activity. However, many civil rights and privacy groups such as the Electronic Frontier Foundation and American Civil Liberties Union have expressed concern that by allowing continual increases in government surveillance of citizens, we will end up in a mass surveillance society. From the Fourth Amendment to George Orwell's 1984, our culture is full of warnings about the dangers of government surveillance and overreach. These warnings are commonplace, but they are very rarely specific. These warnings are no longer science fiction. The digital technologies that have changed our daily lives have also created minutely detailed records of those lives. In an age of terror, our government has shown a desire to get this data and use it for unknown purposes. GPS and cell phone tracking, facial recognition cameras, and drones that can tell if someone is armed, and digital spying are all among emerging technologies and techniques that are increasingly being used by everyone from law enforcement to clothing stores. We know that governments have been doing things like tapping phones, but the amount of phones being tapped has increased greatly. Pen registers and trap and trace have increased tremendously. As you can see, they have almost tripled in the past 20 years. And pen registers are an electronic device which records all numbers called from a particular telephone line, and trap and traces are devices which would show that numbers that have called a specific telephone. We recently learned that the National Security Agency has been developing a massive data and supercomputing center in Utah, apparently with the goal of intercepting and storing much of the world's internet communications for decryption and analysis. We learned from the leaked info of Edward Snowden about top secret information from the U.S. intelligence agencies, and the U.S. government has been and is watching not only foreigners but the U.S. citizens as well. He leaked info about things such as PRISM and KeyScore and others. And these are examples of the kind of programs that U.S. intelligence agencies are running right now against the whole world. With the technology we have today, it is becoming very easy for the government to track and watch us through surveillance cameras, drones, or monitoring activity through the internet. We must begin to pass laws prohibiting the government from performing such actions because they violate the Constitution and personal privacy and freedom. Although we have laws protecting us against government surveillance, secret government programs cannot be stopped or challenged until they are revealed. Even when they are revealed, courts frequently dismiss challenges to such programs under the theory that mere surveillance creates no harms and that it is necessary for the safety of our nation. But the important point is that our society lacks an understanding of why and when government surveillance is harmful. Surveillance, like the current surveillance in America, could very well lead to a dystopia. There are many harmful things about surveillance. Surveillance is harmful because it can hinder our civil liberties, and I believe to protect our intellectual freedom to think without state oversight or interference, we need privacy. Intellectual freedom is important in society because it allows for new and different ideas. Another harm that surveillance causes is that it creates discrimination, coercion, or the threat of selective enforcement. Selective enforcement is where critics of the government can be prosecuted or blackmailed for wrongdoing unrelated to the purpose of the original surveillance. Surveillance has been used many times in the past to silence people who go against the government. The FBI, for example, had obsessively wiretapped the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. with the goal of finding evidence of his role in communism in the civil rights movement. They found no such role in communism, but they wanted some way to silence him because they didn't agree with the movement he was starting. The government's use of surveillance has been increasing greatly over the years. To stop this surveillance going on right now and prevent it from becoming worse, we must do many things. We must recognize that secret surveillance is unlawful and ban the creation of any government surveillance programs that are secret. Furthermore, we must recognize that total surveillance of the internet is illegitimate and reject the idea that it is acceptable for the government to record all internet activity without a warrant. Government surveillance of the internet is a power with the potential for massive abuse and dystopian potential. It must be subjected to meaningful judicial process before it is authorized. We should carefully scrutinize any surveillance that threatens our intellectual privacy. Lastly, we must recognize that surveillance is harmful. Surveillance means intellectual privacy, or menaces intellectual privacy, and increases the risk of blackmail, coercion, and discrimination. Accordingly, we must recognize surveillance as being against the Constitution and our rights. The problems of government surveillance will only increase with advances in technology. I only hope that people listen to these warnings and that we can hopefully regulate it and make sure it does not get even more out of hand. Thank you.